You can throttle conservative content. You can tell conservatives they can't upload. You can tell people who are politically incorrect that they can't upload. You can allow pedophiles to upload to YouTube Kids all you want, but you have to disclose it to your user base. Net neutrality. So before we move on, I get that this is a sensitive topic. I want you to answer the question of the day, but I want you to watch this entire video first. Not only am I asking you, what's your opinion on net neutrality? Everyone's doing that, like, what's your opinion? But what's your opinion on today's sort of selective corporate outrage? Because that's what's surrounding net neutrality right now, is outrage over corporations, their control over the internet, while ignoring the world's biggest corporations who are ardent supporters of net neutrality. And that's something that concerns me and gets a little lost in the cracks. Both sides have arguments with merit. So I want to kind of get into those who are very pro net neutrality and why they believe so and why there's validity to it. Listen, I'm going to roll a clip here, and it's not because I don't like Philip DeFranco. I actually really like Philip DeFranco. I think he's one of the few fair-minded people on the internet. He's been invited on the show. Hopefully we'll have him on soon. I'm actually rolling this clip of Philip DeFranco because he's talked about net neutrality for a long time, and I think he's a pretty good representative of how opposition to, I guess, sort of the current allowing of lapsing of legislation feels. So let's let him set up that side of the argument.
A certain cell service says, hey, if you go with us when you watch Netflix, that doesn't go towards your data cap. Or maybe it's with Hulu or whoever. Now imagine your broadband internet right in your home. All of a sudden you have Comcast. They say, hey, guess what? When you use Hulu, you get the top tier, the premium speed. And they have an incentive. They own a good percentage of Hulu. But then guess what? Netflix, Amazon Prime, those places don't get our fast lane for the internet. It's slower, it's clunkier. Maybe if Netflix or Amazon Prime, they pay us, we'll give them the fast lane. You gotta pay a tax if you want to go over our fast lane bridge. Imagine if Comcast or another ISP launched a competitor to YouTube, and then they could just slow down the speeds to YouTube for their customers. To which you could argue, and the chairman of the FCC now does, well, hey, if an ISP is going to do that, the market will decide we don't want Comcast. The market will keep companies honest and fair, and no. You know how many people have Comcast and they don't want Comcast, but they have to have Comcast because there aren't really any other option?
Okay, I like Philip DeFranco, but there's an irony there that we're looking at the same argument and seeing an entirely different conclusion. He's saying, could you imagine if your broadband company did what your mobile carrier company did? I'm going, could you imagine if broadband was finally as good as the mobile carrier plans out there?
Exactly, right.
And he's talking about creating a competitor to YouTube. Yeah. And this is a guy who's been very outspoken, as we have, about YouTube selectively curating and censoring people. So I'm going to come back to that, which is also why I find it kind of odd when people just gloss over something. Here's clip B.
Google issued a statement saying the FCC's net neutrality rules are working well for consumers, and we're disappointed in the proposal released today.
Yep, Google, huge supporter of net neutrality. We'll come back to that and go, well, why? Because it shouldn't really affect them directly. Okay, few claims that come from net neutrality. Before I get to that, let me set up a worldview. Here's what I think is important, okay? And again, please just hold your thoughts. This is meant to be a discussion on net neutrality because there are reasonable voices on both sides of this issue. It is nuanced, and anytime you get into tech dialogue, people can get really confused. So we're going to try and avoid doing that. Here's the deal. Do you believe that human beings are inherently prone to corruption? Yes? Okay, so do I. Do you believe that corporations are inherently prone to corruption? Yes. Do you believe that people/corporations are inherently prone to corruption the bigger and more powerful they get? Yes, we both agree. Now, do you believe the only exception to that is YouTube, Google, Facebook, and the United States federal government? If not, you're going to have some apprehension about net neutrality, okay? That's where the worldview comes in. So let's look at it through that lens. Here's some of the things that people claim with net neutrality. We need net neutrality because there aren't enough ISP choices, internet service providers. And the market, as I said, they don't have, it only has power if there are enough choices. Okay. Yeah. Do you know who actually would most benefit and most love to see net neutrality repealed? Small rural ISPs. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. Just Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, it's easy to talk about big evil corporations and not talk about the smaller companies that would stand to benefit. So net neutrality can really harm smaller ISPs. Under net neutrality, as we have them now, ISPs have to submit proposals for any new technology, or I think it's new technology or business model. This is the exact quote. So on top of all the red tape, right, and all of the costs, the burdening costs, the FCC can also turn down proposals without giving the company any opportunity to appeal. Does that sound like fostering innovation? Does that sound like something that would encourage competition. We also hear that we need to impose monopoly laws on ISPs in areas where there's little competition. So this goes back to kind of telecom communication companies, right? Title II, regulating them like that. A lot of people have talked about regulating YouTube and Facebook and Twitter as telecommunication companies under Title II, and I've defended them and said, no, I don't think that anyone should force them to treat content equally. But that ties into why there's a reason that they actually support net neutrality. We'll come back to that. So there's actually this article from Fast Company, and this is what they write about. They write about a company. What's the name of the company? I think it's
Cable One. Cable One.
Cable One, yep. Right? So they talk about Cable One covering being the only option, right, for broadband in rural areas. Okay. And so this is an article that they write about. They talk about how if they were regulated under Title II as telecommunication companies, well, the government would actually be able to set the rates because Cable One keeps raising the prices. Now, they keep raising the prices. Why? Because they're the only one there. So they say that they're raising prices. Now, that being said, their prices are somewhere around $80 per month, which is actually pretty much right middle of the road. It's not like it's completely outlandish. Right, sure. But these articles that have been sent to me by Fast, I've had this sent to me a dozen times. Think about this for a second. Let's assume, okay, the smaller rural ISP, Cable One, is evil and their only goal is to screw people, and that's why they're jacking up prices. What happens if the government does set rates on Cable One? Let me ask you this, genuinely, what do you think happens? Do you think that if there's a set ceiling, Cable One is going to be providing better internet? Do you think they're going to be upgrading their servers? Do you think they're going to be upgrading, their abilities? They're going to be upgrading their speeds? They're going to be creating better packages? Or if the rates are set, do you think it's more likely that they're just going to say, all right, this is where we are? And let me ask you this, do you think it's more or less likely if the rate is set in that area, let's say rural Mississippi, for another competing ISP to come in and make a killing putting Cable One out of business? Where is it more or less likely for those people to get better internet service? So another claim that we hear a lot is if we repeal net neutrality, there will be separate packages, right? This is what Philip DeFranco, a lot of people talk about. Internet access, video streaming, emails, that'll be split up, that they'll be throttled, right? This is a slippery slope without a lot of support. There are only 2 instances, and they're a little more complicated than people let on. I think it was Comcast with Netflix, and AT&T hit a huge fine for throttling people if they're unlimited, putting them back down to slower speeds. But all of that was corrected, not because of legislation, but because it was immediately made public, and it was so toxic that people started dropping their plans.
The market was pissed.
The market was pissed. Mobile data plans, remember how they used to be so extremely limited? They were and people now are fearing that broadband packages will be like that without net neutrality. Where have you seen more competition? Where have you seen your rates become more competitive, your plan become better? Your mobile data plan or broadband? What you're paying for right now. Because now mobile plans are unlimited with faster and faster speeds thanks to a free market. Another claim that we hear a lot is that we have to have net neutrality because big evil corporations. People think, well, because a big company supports it, it must be bad. But then there's another big company that supports it. And in this case, you have the world's biggest companies in Google and Facebook who, by the way, unlike the ISPs, they have a long and storied history of dishonest censorship and throttling and content favoritism. Facebook alone, I don't know how many tens of times. And this begs the question, why is Google, YouTube, and Facebook, why are these giant companies so adamant about supporting net neutrality? Here's something else crazy. Big companies like Google, they're not really customers of ISPs. They connect directly to the web, directly through internet exchange points. So it doesn't directly affect them. But you'd be hard-pressed to find people who would support regulating YouTube, Google, certainly small government libertarians as a telecommunications company under the guidelines that would basically force them to allow all content to be uploaded and distributed equally. But I would support, and this is a big step for a libertarian, small government libertarian like me, under Title II, if we agree to transparency laws, which is a big part of the repealing of net neutrality right now. It's, okay, listen, first off, there are still antitrust laws. There are still monopoly laws. So if you're to throttle, which you're not supposed to do, you have to let your customer base know. That's a big part of this legislation. That's a big part of this change is transparency is being given the priority. Now, I would not support regulating YouTube, Facebook, Google under Title II if it's, you have to treat all content equally. But I would support putting them under that kind of regulation if it just means that they have to be transparent with people using YouTube. Hey, listen, you can throttle conservative content. You can tell conservatives they can't upload. You can tell people who are politically incorrect that they can't upload. You can allow pedophiles to upload to YouTube Kids all you want, but you have to disclose it to your user base. And that's why when you put the puzzle pieces together and you think about it, you go, hold on a second, why would YouTube and Google and Facebook be such huge supporters of net neutrality if it didn't affect them? I think think it opens the door to people saying, hey, we can regulate an industry here just by ensuring that they are transparent. Basically, the government is a referee at that point. The government is a referee with its whistle saying, hey, you're breaking the rules there. We're going to put you in the penalty box. On the other hand, you have a fence right here, right? You have a line. So people talking about evil corporations, you're saying, okay, this is the big evil corporations are against net neutrality. Okay, here's the line. On one side you do. You have Verizon, you have AT&T, you have Comcast, you have small rural ISPs as well. You have a lot of companies, okay? That's on this side of the line. On the other side, you do have Google, YouTube, Facebook, and potentially the federal government. Now, the government is not a referee. It's not enforcing transparency. It's picking sides. They have buddies in their pocket, the biggest companies in the world. So if you want to talk about monopolies, I would certainly say that Facebook and YouTube has more of a monopoly on the transfer of information, certainly media, than Cable
so
One.
Much more.
Yeah. Than Cable One, providing 700,000 households in Missouri. And they are so adamantly pro-net neutrality because precisely if people say, wow, we can actually fix this industry, we can regulate it without stepping in, just making sure that they're following the rules, just making sure that they're disclosing with their customers what they're doing, guess what? You'd have a lot of people. As a matter of fact, you'd have people lining up to say, let's apply those standards to YouTube or Facebook. No. Let's not do that. Let's look at the evil cell phone companies who gave you unlimited data and gave you free hotspots and gave you free Spotify and free T-Mobile, Netflix downloading because they're the bad guys. They're the big evil corporations. Google, Facebook, we're the mom and pop shop. You don't need any transparency with us. This is why it comes back down to the worldview. Do you believe that anyone is exempt from the proclivity toward human corruption? I don't. Whether that's Comcast or Verizon, just like people who support net neutrality, I agree with you, but I also don't believe that Google, Facebook, and YouTube have pure motives here, nor the big government legislators who want to have their hands in the pocket. Hey, did you like this video? Of course you did. Unless there's something wrong with you, in which case you can comment below. What's your problem with this video? We want to hear from you, and we promise you 100%, I give you, my word is my bond, we'll answer every single negative comment. For those who are normal, you can leave a thumbs up and subscribe.